By the way, Tarif, I was in the year my elder sister. We are two. That elder brother and me.
Phyllis?
She's in Canada. She's in Edmonton. Canada zaman. But the brown shin naktane.
Subscribe now and join us for the stories that connect us all. Together, let's explore the heart of South Sudan. Welcome to Around South Sudan. You go to podcast for the stories that shape our nation. Each week we explore the most impactful headlines that are shaping the narrative in South Sudan. We delve into issues related to national development, peace building, politics, culture and economics. To stay informed and engaged, tune into Around South Sudan and be part of the conversation that matters. Subscribe now and join us for the stories that connect us all. Together, let's explore the heart of South Sudan. Welcome to Around South Sudan. You go to podcast for the stories that shape our nation. Each week we explore the most impactful headlines that are shaping the narrative in South Sudan. We delve into issues related to national development, peace building, politics, culture and economics. To stay informed and engaged, tune into Around South Sudan and be part of the conversation that matters. Subscribe now and join us for the stories that connect us all. Together, let's explore the heart of South Sudan. Welcome to Around South Sudan. You go to podcast for the stories that shape our nation. Each week we explore the most impactful headlines that are shaping the narrative in South Sudan. We delve into issues related to national development, peace building, politics, culture and economics. To stay informed. Hello, welcome to Around South Sudan podcast on iRadio, your source for in-depth analysis and updates on South Sudan's peace process, political landscape, the lead up to 2026 elections. I am Lasuba Memo, and in today's episode, we are looking at the latest crucial developments that have unfolded in South Sudan this week. The first question that may be lingering in the minds of South Sudanese is the restructuring of the unity government looming? Well, you may know that the high-level standing committee has made a significant decision recognizing the SPLM-IO Juba faction under Stephen Parkwall as the legitimate group to continue the implementation of the 2018 peace agreement. And will this lead to success in the implementation of a 2018 peace agreement? Earlier, or could you say that the SPLM-IO faction outside Juba had preempted this right, that the government in Juba planned to make changes? And also next is the extension of UNMISS mandate until 2026. So we will look at the role of UNMISS in peacekeeping in South Sudan as we explore key aspects of the mandate, including the protection of civilians, ensuring humanitarian assistance, supporting the peace process, and monitoring violations of international law. And in the third item, we will delve into the increment of water price in the national capital, Juba, by the Urban Water Corporation. Water tankers with a 30 drum capacity will now cost 42,000 SSP from 28,000, while the price of 15 drums rose from 21,000, rose to 21,000 from 13,000. So high operation cost of production, including high electricity tariffs and high cost of chemicals, among the reasons cited behind the move. And I'm glad to be joined by three colleagues here in the studio. Al-Hadi Awari, seated right to my face, and next to him is Kongpal Chang, a seasoned analyst and station manager, and right to my right is Emmanuel Joseph Akile, who is an expert at having a lot of insight in the peace agreement. He's also the presenter of the Dawn Show. It's my pleasure having all of you aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start up with the latest decision, which was actually yesterday by the high-level standing committee, where a decision was reached recognizing SPLM-IO group in Juba as a legitimate peace partner to implement the peace agreement. And prior to that, we heard from the acting chairperson of SPLM-IO outside Juba, Oyed Nathaniel, warning plans by Juba to make changes in the structure of the unity government. And the first question is, Kong Palchang, were you surprised?
No, because we talked about this before in this show, where we anticipated that the scenario of 2016 will happen. And what the announcement of yesterday has confirmed is a confirmation that the IO again has tricked themselves and the political games where an incident happened and the other one take opportunity. As they said, in politics, when that window of opportunity avail itself, you take it.
So history has repeated it.
Yeah, it's the same thing happening. So I think the most happiest guy now is Stephen Parr, because he's the next, possibly, is the next first vice president, if I'm not wrong, if he replaced Dr. Riek Machar, as we expect. Any time announcement can be made, because there's too much pressure from international community. You see statements flying on daily basis, condemnations, calling on the parties to implement peace agreements, release of Dr. Riek Machar from house arrest, other SPLM-IO leaders, AU mission in South Sudan, IGAD, RGMEC, the AU headquarters, the visited camp, UNMISS, UN headquarters in New York. All those are statements going against the government because they want the government to release Riek and let Salva and Riek continue to implement, let them dialogue and implement peace. But this also is going against now Juba is going against the world, the calls, and decided possibly they announced they recognize the SPLM-IO groups led by Stephen Parr. So anytime they will announce, they say the replacement of those positions or those who are out of the world, and we are the youngest nation in the world, and you will later talk about the extension of UN, and you saw what happened yesterday in New York about every country, many countries giving statement about South Sudan. So we cannot isolate ourselves and say to hell with whatever they are saying, we are moving on with whatever we are doing as implementing the peace agreement, because we need also the region, we need the international community. So I think it's important for the government also to listen to the cause. But however, coming back to the current affairs in terms of what happened yesterday, I think, like Kong said, we are not surprised, Lasubo Memo. This is something we preempted. We talked about it previously. But then the scenario is a little bit different from the one of Taban Denga in 2016, because here now we're not... what is important now, there is no violence, there's no fighting in Juba. That can be the first difference between what happened in 2016 and now. However, moving ahead or proceeding with what is happening right now, trying to restructure the mechanisms or trying to appoint the members of SPLM-IO representative in the vacant positions will also impact negatively. Why? Because the main reason of the chairman of SPLM-IO under detention was because of the issue of Nasser. So that issue has not been concluded, and the senior SPLM-IO, of course, who are under detention. It has not concluded. We are waiting for the investigation. We will find out later whether he will be produced to the court of law or not. So why are we rushing from, why are we hanging the case of Dr. Riek Machar and other senior SPLM-IOs who are under detention? Meanwhile, we are moving ahead with sabotaging the implementation of crucial provisions in the revitalized peace agreement. Because remember, we talked about his name being mentioned in the peace agreement, and also with the replacement, Lasubo Memo, of these officials or representative of the SPLM-IO,
we're just looking for continuation of conflict, because recently there was an exclusive interview with one of the journalists, Matiang Cirulo, with Parkol himself, and he said, he was asked whether he's commanding all the forces of the SPLA-IO. He said in some areas, but in some areas they are not listening to him because they still believe their chairman is Dr. Riek Machar. So if they move ahead also with this process of replacement, this will also add up more violence, because all these forces who are not loyal to Parkol, who are not believing in him as the interim chair, will continue with the violence. And we're not looking at peace, actually. We are creating more problems and more troubles to ourselves.
You did say something vital, why the government in Juba and also the party that has been recognized would move ahead, and the issue of the detention of First Vice President and other members of SLM have not been concluded. Are you saying they should have actually determined this before moving ahead?
Of course, they should have thought about it, and this tells you, Lesuba Memo, clearly, especially when you analyze it deeply, you will know the intention of what happened in Palm Africa. You will know the intention. The intention was not to calm down, or was not to continue with the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. So the intention was not to push, actually, for the release of their chair and the release of their other detainees. But the intention is exactly what happened yesterday. The intention is, like concert opportunities, to take over from whoever ran away. We have a number of ministers from the SPLMI who ran away. Immediately they will be replaced. So that is the intention now of the process. That is what I can say. And also, the high-level standing committee, Lesuba, is not the final authority to decide whether they will, of course, be accepted or not. That was their mandate. They are overseeing the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement, but then they normally report to the presidency. And you never know what will happen to the presidency if they submit the outcome of their meeting. Maybe the presidency will reject it. Maybe the presidency, as a final authority, will say, you go back and look at it again. So this is not a final decision that we can talk about that. They are going to replace everyone from the SPLM IO.
Political interest or individual interest versus implementing a genuine peace, two different things. Kong alluded to, you know, as a politician, you would always want to see these opportunities and grab. And if you were in the shoes of Parkwal, I'm sure your mind would think otherwise or so. But now we're looking at the impact of this, because in the end, you're saying, if it is not done in the right way, so there is the potential of having, extending this violence further. Now, Al-Hadi, so what is your take? Because as Akil has said, the parties are moving on, those in Juba, with the process of the, say, fast-tracking the peace agreement, but also there are other setbacks that would come along.
Yes, let me pick it from a different angle. What I've just tried to analyze is that we have, yes, you know, the road was too long for us. If we try to mention Sudan, since 1956, as South Sudan since 2011, we inherited two bad things, you know, as this country, if you try to talk about the politicians. One is lack of political will in terms of implementing agreements. Number two is dirty political games, you know, always between the politicians. They're not thinking about the people, they think about themselves. So, and the scenario of this revitalized peace agreement, if you look at it, all those people are SPLM. So for them to think about this positive historical background, no, they're not doing that. So now, for the current, you know, activities that is happening in the country, in terms of who is Stephen Parkwal and the other group with him, those of Agok Makur and the side of the government, is not a win-win case. It's good with the government, because if you look at like what happened in Upper Nile now, those who have been appointed there, most of them are government politicians. So government now is winning against the SPLM-IO. So if you look at the SPLM-IO, they're talking about peace. But to me, the peace agreement itself is not there. Because when you talk about peace, that means the other parties. I'm talking about SOA, talking about OPP, talking about the ODM. Now, yesterday we had that Lamakol. Now he returned to the system again as part of the peace agreement. But I'm sure also return, you know, someone also loses his job as a partner of that peace, the party. For Stephen Parkwall and his groups, you will see. To me, this one, it might deepening the division within the SPLM-IO itself, the one Juba faction, no? The division will happen, when, I'm sure when they're going to agree with the government about the list of the people, the ministers who's going to be there, the difference will come up. And then you will see some people start calling I-Radio that my name is not there, what we agreed before was not like this, and this and this. I want to make a statement, I want to say this. And then if you look at those who are together with Dr. Riek Machar, most of them they're not in Juba here, including Oyed Nathaniel. Although all the statement that Oyed Nathaniel is using, if you look at it, there is some very reasonable and logic points there concerning the implementation of peace agreement. But what I've seen, the intervention of the international community and the regional leaders don't have any fruitful results. They still were in the same area. What you're going to do, the government is saying, we're going to present the first vice president to the court because he's in conflict with the law. At the same time, if Stephen Parkwall tries to read the situation very well, you'll know that tomorrow, next tomorrow also, you'll be in the same situation, with the law also, against the law. So, all in all, at the end, who is victim? The people of South Sudan. Because people are yearning for peace, people are yearning for security and stability. But now there is no any kind of those elements that people are yearning for. At the end, you'll ask yourself, what is the way forward? For this revitalized peace agreement of 2018 to move on. For them to move on, they will come again one party. Because what I know, any unity government in any country must be, the discussion. People must discuss and talk about it. Now you ask yourself why the parliament is still off. That it says, and I think 1 month something now. Because the parliament is the only place that in the country you see the MPs from different parties. They can talk. They can express their concern without any, restrictions. So now for you to open the parliament, you have to wait to calm down the political situation in the country, and then from there you say, okay, let us go. But I'm sure when they're coming back also, you will see the number of the SPLM-IO members. They're not like before. That means, again, you create the same circle of the violence. Is not necessary for you to have violence, someone to do the guns. But when you have a lot of oppositions that are opposing you and they're outside the country, they can win the game. How? Because they're sending their voice. When they're inside, they cannot do anything. But when they're outside, they're sending their voice. There is something happening there. Why? Because we have signed a revitalized peace agreement in 2018, but things are not okay. Why? Because you'll implement less than, I think a kilo is it less than 20% or 15%. So where the other percentage? It's not there. So yes. For me to conclude, all in all, those of Stephen Parkwall and the other side, they have to think about the people of South Sudan, not think about themselves as politicians. Because I'm sure this thing will go to the first zero round again, because at the end, they need dialogue. They have to dialogue. They have to talk. They have to agree.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks. And so, how might the factions or other groups respond to the high-level standing committee's decision to recognize the SPLM-IO Juba faction?
As we speak now in South Sudan, the one who has upper hands is the government, the SPLM itself. So whatever they say, even their own positions are being taken. Let's talk about SOA. The position has been taken by the government. Like, for example, the governor of Jonglei is for SOA. Have you seen them releasing a statement? And instead, the chairperson congratulated the president for appointing their own party members in their place. Because she's appointed as a vice president, so she's comfortable, she's okay. Let me say this. This peace agreement is a scam. Okay, it's a scam. If you can read what is in the mind of the group of power now, is let me get a ministerial positions so that I build a house in Kenya or in Uganda. Because those who are there, they are comfortable, their family are okay. Even those who are in jail, especially those who have been appointed in a financial institution. So it's a scam. I say scam because it's about making politicians to make money, not to solve the problem of South Sudan. Now, the ball is in the court of the ruling party. The ruling party is like they are, you know, it's like, how can I describe them? They choose who to coerce, who to accommodate. And they choose this time, oh, we are not accommodating Riek, we are tired of Riek, we want to accommodate another guy. And that's why they are comfortable with PAR. Now my message to PAR, because I want PAR also to look back to how Taban Dengai was, I can say in politics, was used, and he got his position, and all his guys were the Mufi SPLM. Shilubara, they were taken out of the, okay, after, during honeymoon, it was okay, everything was okay. Or he appointed his ministers in the place of those people who were appointed by Riek. Even in the parliament, he appointed his people in the place of those who were appointed by Riek. After Riek returned, what happened? All his guys were removed. He was called. You join the SPLM so that you will be given some few seats. And I'm seeing it's like we are going around to this, doing the same thing, doing the same thing, doing the same thing, the same circle. So PAR, during this honeymoon, he will be comfortable with his position. But, and I believe with this pressure coming, will President Salva Kiir accept to be isolated in the world? This is his leadership. What will happen if the pressure becomes too much? He will sacrifice PAR and say release Riek Machar and go back again for another round of enriching themselves, the politicians.
No, extend the
and extend it.
No election.
So this is what, let me say this. PAR, you know, PAR is my class. He was my classmate. We're in high school, so I know him. I normally meet him. He's a career diplomat. So my message to him, I can meet him, but now he's become, and I may not meet him. But my message,
it's a public figure.
Yeah, my message to him is this: if he mean his message during the funeral of a businessman, Matairwe, if he means what he means, let him talk to whoever, because he said during his speech, he said we should not shy away from condemning the ongoing bombardment of civilian targets in Upper Nile and Unity State and Jonglei. He said he should speak. If he has now become darling of government, let him talk to the government to stop bombing the citizen. That's when people will believe him that he's in charge.
But it seems
let the government go and bomb IO area, not civilians area. If he succeed in talking to the government, then well and good.
Now, it seems to be also serious a little bit with the implementation of the peace agreement, because in his statement he said he emphasized on ensuring that violations is stopped. Violations is stopped, and this
but
is
violation will not stop, because especially with the IO now, who will be declared enemy of the state. The IO in the bush, the IO fighting the government. The war will continue.
Yeah, bitter.
Yeah, the war will continue. We will be comfortable here in Juba with our security, but in the villages and all those places where IO is, because to me, I believe IO has not yet hit back hard. And when it hit back hard, you will see also maybe going for, because as a government, you will not continue fighting a war that you may see will consume the resource. They may sit down. So that one is another issue by itself. But here they will be comfortable implementing peace toward what? The intention, what I know, is to go for election. Okay?
Is that possible?
Yeah, they will go for election. It's possible. South Sudan was at war with Sudan that time. An election in Sudan went several times. Bashir was elected several times, I think twice or thrice. Still, we can go for election. In Juba here, we can go for election. What is wrong with it? We elect the president or whoever will come from SPLM, he will be the president, or Salva Kiir himself coming, he will be the president. And whoever is still fighting the whole-out group, he will still open doors for continue to make peace.
Any more thoughts?
Yeah, I think the issue of elections is possible, but also requires again another commitment in terms of resources. And I would just really urge, or I would really advise all the political leaders to reduce the tension before we go for elections, because if this circle continues and we're talking about elections, if this year ends, for instance, we cross to 2026 and we're still talking about violations, bombardment and attacks, I think the elections will either be rigged or it will not be free, fair and credible as we always preach. So what is important is for all the parties actually to come together and rescue the peace agreement, which is already almost dead, like Al-Hadi has just mentioned, Lasuba.
Right. Yeah. So what is the best way forward? Because it looks like a sticky situation. There's no headway for the country. And what we see is that, as most of you
that
have
is
said,
that is your opinion, my friend. The headway is there. As a government, huh? I believe the government is prepared to do two things. To fight the IO in the bush and implement peace with the IO, friendly IO, and go to election. And we go for election. Those are the two things that we should see in the next coming.
But now you're going to use the election as just a formality.
Of course.
Yeah, I can remember we are in
You've been in Sudan. You've
yes,
been in
I can
Sudan.
remember.
Election happened. Can you
I
tell
can
us
remember.
how?
I can remember. You know,
Yeah.
Al-Bashir, during Al-Bashir time, you know, in the places that controlled by the Sudan by South, all the soldiers, they will just line up in the morning during the ballot, the vote. All of them Al-Bashir, Al-Bashir, yeah. But those of Al-Bashir, they're very smart. They're always creating scenarios. You know how they can direct it out. Those scenarios, it must be successful with them as the military government. So what I believe in Africa, most of these African countries, they don't have stability. They have issues of security, but they have elections, just to please the people that we are here, and what we are doing the right things that for you guys to live also as decent citizens. Although, if you look at all the elements of what they're talking about are not there. That's why the scenario of South Sudan, like Kong mentioned, is better for us to go for this election. Whatever formally is going to come out from it, go to it, and then if you have any dialogue or any negotiations with different parties that they're in conflict with you, just deal with them, in a good way, and then later just come and accommodate them in a government.
Right.
That is it.
Let's move to the next item, and it is still to do with the situation in South Sudan. If it was in the UN would have not actually extended the mandate of the United Nations mission in South Sudan, and they have clearly explained the situation in the country is still volatile, and there's still political tension in the country, and so they have renewed the same mandate of UNMISS in the country, protecting the civilians, providing humanitarian assistance, preparing the country for elections, and so forth and so forth. Now, looking back in the past years, South Sudan has gone through journeys of violence from 2013, 2016, and now we're seeing a new turn again in the country. So, what is your assessment about the role of UNMISS in South Sudan? Do you think with this new mandate is going to be changed in the way it has been doing things? Emmanuel Joseph Akile.
I don't think anything will change. UN remains the same UN that we've been that we know from the 2011, I think, especially official UN being in South Sudan after our independence. So I really don't think there is any change, or there's going to be any change from the extension. This is something annually happens. We are always writing the story. reiterating our commitment. We will continue. And you know, first, UN has primary mandates or responsibility. First, the protection of civilians. And then you have the second now, protection of humanitarian aid workers, and also ensuring peace and security in South Sudan. So the extension is targeting these 2 or 3 primary mandate or responsibilities of the United Nations. And you saw yesterday in New York, Lasuba, you saw about, of course, this was first read out by the US because it's the pen holder of South Sudan. And we have about 12 countries agreeing for the extension. Then we have 3 abstentions, China, then you have Russia, and then Pakistan. But then looking at the overall operations of UN in South Sudan, many people have been positively benefiting from the services of the United Nations mission in South Sudan, especially the IDPs, the internal displaced person, and also trying in monitoring and warning parties on the violations of the ceasefire and maintaining peace. So that is a credit that we will also give it to the UN. However, if you listen to the statement of South Sudan representative to the UN Security Council yesterday, was talking about UN at some point overstepping its mandate. You know, like for instance, they mentioned looking at protecting diplomatic missions, and you know, this is according to international law and Vienna Convention. This is the primary sovereignty of South Sudan to protect the diplomatic mission. So UN should not step out of its mandate. Sometimes it goes beyond its mandate. This has been the concern or the complaint of the government of South Sudan, which is always, personally I see it's something genuine. And also looking at China, explaining that why they abstain from these, because the international community continues to push hard, especially the UN. It's pushing South Sudan very hard, and it's still a young country. Instead of supporting the country. For instance, the UN is talking about good governance in South Sudan. We have just gained independence in 2011. We are trying our best. The government is trying its best. So the UN should not use harsh language for a country like South Sudan. So that is also a genuine concern being raised by China. So I think Kong maybe can add something.
When you say harsh,
yeah, that's what they said. Code actually harsh language.
But we have been blaming ourselves as South Sudanese that we don't have the political will to bring these changes in the country.
Yeah, but the concern of China, for instance, why are they using harsh language to us? And for instance, talking about in terms of good governance, we are not managing our resources well. But the China is arguing that we have regional turmoil, we have problem of our oil. These are all factors that is affecting our resources in terms of getting resources and have to move the country forward. So the international community or the UN should also look at these other factors instead of punishing us, sanctioning us all the time.
Do you agree?
Yeah, the renewal of UN mandate is happening because we as a country, we choose to be our civilians. We choose that our civilians will be taken care by UN or UN international community, because it's very simple. When it happened, when we separated from Sudan, Bashir told UN, pack and go. I don't need you. And they left. And that's why they moved here. So I think the government has no strategy plan for how they can make sure that UN does not stay here longer. There's a way you can say, I don't need you guys. Yes, they have been helping, protecting civilians, but there is reach a point where also sometimes they allow incident to happen, the killing to happen, and when the killing happen, and then now is when they come and say, oh, those who run away from the problem come and seek protection from their camps. But personally, I have a low opinion in UN because, like Bashir said the other time, they just crowded Sudan roads with vehicles, like they are congesting our traffic with road and all those things. What does that mean is their work does not really, you see, does not translate to what they are expected to be doing. Because as a government, how do they call them? Like they are partners with the government. But sometimes they act like they are the one in charge. Like for example, they are running their own airports. Do you check those vehicles? Do you see what are they bringing at the border in Numili? Those things that our custom guys sometimes say, no, these are not exempted. This should be paid for. So there are so many things that, to me, I have a low opinion with UN, because the more there's a problem, the more they're happy, because they're being paid.
Continue
the job.
to stay.
Mean your suffering is when you suffer, they are employed because of your suffering.
Who is to blame? Not as South Sudanese.
It's our
who do not want
government.
to
I
bring
said
peace.
earlier, it's our government to put a strategic plan for how this UN can exit the country. Let's go for election and tell them we are done. Election is done. We have a leader now.
You have
You can
peace
go.
and security.
We have peace. You know, there's no complete stability that you will say. There's no even U.S. Even where they are in New York. You see, they are challenged. There are crimes. So, in any country they are challenged. In any country they are challenged. So you will never have 100% peace that you will say is when I will leave the country. No.
But in South Sudan, you've seen the level of violence is so high, and you're talking about election. We have elections, and then we'll let them pack and go. But I wish you that elections in this country will bring relative stability, because that's going to be a challenge.
Do you see Eritrea? Do they have UN? But they are surviving. Look at the Ethiopia. When they went into war with Ethiopia went to war with Tigray. The UN tried, no, they say they went to South Africa and solved their own problem without UN. Without UN.
But now they're okay.
So yeah, so they are still having problem, but you know that's not the end of the. When you achieve something, it does not mean the problem will end. I am not comfortable with UN totally.
Just to add something before you bring Al Hadi memo. Also, let's be clear also to the public so that we don't confuse ourselves. When we're talking about the UN, we're talking about here right now. We're talking about UNMISS. Which came under the status of forces agreement, which is SOFA agreement, signed actually right after the independence of South Sudan. So that's the UN. So we're not referring to UNICEF, for instance. We're not referring to UNFPA, UNDP. All these are different totally from the UN we're talking about, or the extension of the mandate. But also, like you mentioned, also at some point we have to blame our leaders or our government of over relying on the UN. And if you're over relying on them, that you're telling them that you need them more and more, you see. Because go to the airport, we'll see, even on social media, governor of X state arriving, being welcomed. See the choppers they are using, UN. Governor is traveling where? UN. So you're telling them that we are not ready to govern ourselves or to take care of ourselves. We need you. And at some point you're telling them pack and go. But you are using their services, you see. So I think government also has to step up to cover up for, if they leave, the vacuum they will leave behind here should also be the responsibility of the government.
That's what the UN has. The UN, I've been saying, even the US government, that most of these things are the responsibilities of the government.
Yes, what I want to say, South Sudan, we are member of, member state of...
the 93rd member
yes.
of the UN.
The thing is this, I have different opinion from Kong and Akile. The extension itself, it shows us that there is an international community commitment towards South Sudan. Not South Sudan government, but South Sudan people. I'm sure there is difference between the government. Although those leaders, they are minority, and then the people are the majority. But the people are the ones suffering, not the... Do you see any politician here suffering? I don't think. So what happened, the extension is toward the people of South Sudan. That's why they extend. And I'm sure even before the election of next year, again they're going to extend, because this extension is 1 year to April of next year, 2026. So if you look at it, because they want to make sure that there is stability, there is peace, there is security, and then there is no human rights violation, to report all those kind of things. In terms of why UN here is too long like this, we are neighboring Congo here. I think the UN there since, they're still there. Although Congo can double South Sudan more than 10 times. They're still there. The main issue is why, always the question, why UN? Why UN? what they're doing. Last time, one of the national ministers said they're always using their cars, going the convoy to fish the water from the riverside, come with zero distance, zero power speed. You see, there is a lot of issues around them. But for us to put our house in order and to reach that level of, how to do our things, like Akil and Kong says, I'm sure we'll succeed. And then we can say, pack and go as UN. There is the issues of UNISFA there. And then the other things, Akil and Kong, this internal memo or internal agreement that between the government and the UN mission and number of countries in Africa, this is where the issue erupted between the government and UN. Because our people, when you look at the details of the agreement, like now, people are talking about soft agreement. Even some government officials, they don't know what is a soft agreement. The details that, because the exemptions of the, paying the taxes and whatever, and then they've already hired, a subcontractor company to do that on behalf of them. And that subcontractor is not allowed to get that exemptions rights, privileges, because the subcontractor company is not the UN mission. You see, these are some of the things, whenever we go for press conference, they complain about it. You ask them, did you go through the papers? No. They'll just talk and make noise. There is nothing there like that. But memo, just to tell our viewers, this one I'm sure is for the people of South Sudan. Yeah, I know there is a lot of cross-cutting issues, especially between the government and why UN is doing this. And like, for example, now, this POC is no longer POC, am I right? This one.
Handed over to the government.
Handed to the government. But we're still talking about UN. They're not there. And people are still running there, they say, no, when the UN come. It's not UN come, it's no longer UN come. It's under the Minister of Interior. The police, the one dealing with people, and then the other, I think there is a commission there. I think it's RRC. So, to me, is that the government of South Sudan, or the country, as South Sudanese, we still together with the world, we are not isolated. Because if we are isolated, we will not get that commitment from the national community to extend, because it's a matter of injecting resources, funding. This mission is big, by the way. You have thousands of, more than 15,000 of peacekeepers. Forget about this local stuff that those who are South Sudanese are benefiting also from the job with UNMISS. So it's a matter of commitment. And now what we know is the cutting of the funding by the USAID as one of the major donors in the UN missions. So what I know is they have internal the same issues of funding. You see?
I was about to ask this question. What do you think will be, just looking up ahead, what are the biggest challenges UNMISS will face carrying out its mandate in the next 1 year? Do you foresee this?
I think...
Sorry, let me just put one thing. What is going to happen now is like this. If you try to watch your TV or the news, to check the websites these days, there is a lot of issue, a lot of competing crises all over the world. You have Pakistan, India, you have Iran, Yemen, and Israel.
And they have peacekeepers.
Yes, you have Sudan itself. There in Chad, you have refugees. There is a competing crisis. That means those who are giving money outside, they will sit. And then they'll say, okay, our priority this year, for example, it's not South Sudan. Let us go to Kashmir, for example. Let us go to the other side of Yemen. Because now, 2 days ago, during this fighting between Yemen and Israel, I think number of places there that are destroyed completely. There is refugees there. And always, Africans, we look at ourselves like, you have been refugees, all of us have been refugees. So, if you look at the help or assistance that they are getting, it's not the one of the Middle East. So, with the last people here, for us to think about by those people there. So, the issue the challenge that they're going to face, the extension is already done. But for them to mobilize the money to do the operations within this 1 year in New York. Because don't forget, in April next year, they have to think about the elections. If they look at the situation that there is seriously from the government to go for elections, another extension for 1 year. That extension is going to be heavy than this one because you're going to do a lot of things. And now UNMISS, I think, is become, there's a project within UNMISS and UNDP. They're helping the election commission. So that means they're going to face the challenge of funding.
Thank you. Akile?
Yeah, I mentioned the same thing I wanted to, but just to add one more on what he said, I think they will, Nicholas Haysom, the chief of UNMISS in New York, he mentioned the challenge of unhindered access to humanitarian assistance, and even them being hindered to access some of the areas experiencing, let's say, violence or supporting in the escorting the humanitarian assistance. That has been a challenge persistently. So I think this will continue to happen because we look at the political current political situation in the country, and especially with the first topic we talked about, looking at the SPLA-IO, some of them in their controlled areas who are bitter, who are not paying allegiance to Parkwal, and Kong earlier talked about the violence in terms of bombardment, I mean, having like retaliatory kind of attacks. So this will continue to happen, and the common citizen will continue to be displaced and will continue to suffer. So them, in terms of supporting to deliver the humanitarian assistance to the areas, that challenge will continue to persist if we don't subside the current political situation. I think this is what I can add to what Al-Hadi has mentioned.
So isn't it why their presence is really significant? You said you have a low opinion about that, but given the context,
my friend, you can survive. Without UN, you can survive. What if UN goes today? South Sudan will not be there? We will be there. We will survive. Even those days when our grandfathers, there used to be crisis, and they used to live. Unless now we said, okay, world has become one, and we are helping ourselves. But yes, the challenge will be there because now the world is thinking about these countries that are contributing money to these missions are thinking, why are we, they're asking themselves, why are we giving these people money? What is our interest there? What will this money bring to us? If we pay this money, what will we benefit from that mission? So it's about, you scratch my back, I scratch your back. So it's about this world now. The interest is what works, especially the world of Trump. I heard he said, he's the leader of the world. He called himself the leader of the world because when he say anything, the world listen. So
the other thing is parties in South Sudan, those involved in the conflict, do not adhere to the international law, and there have been reports of many human rights violations here. And he's talking about we can still survive, but civilians are prone to they become victims of violence, and that is why the UN actually plays a very key role there.
Yeah, you know, definitely civilian will always suffer, because even if you look at the report from MSF, one of the field coordinator in that hospital that was bombed, he say over 100,000 people were displaced, and they are roaming in the bushes, and these people need humanitarian assistance. But this is man-made crisis. This conflict is made. It's politician. It's politics.
So we can survive.
It's
without
politics.
this
It's
support.
a politics. If our people, our leaders, they have this country in their heart, this problem can be stopped in one day. Because it's about you and me sitting together. Say, what do you want? If you stay here in Jenduro, what do you want? Why do you want me to? What can we do here in this Jenduro? If it's about land, take this part, I take this part, and we sit.
Build for me G+3.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's agree. We cannot. You know, in this South Sudan, there's nobody who is created in this South Sudan will ever not be part of this South Sudan. All of us will be here, whether we like it or not. All of us will live together.
Just to add briefly to what Kong has mentioned, I want to give an example. I was reading an article of Ibrahim Traore, the president of Burkina Faso. You know how they were colonized, and I mean the superpower. I mean especially France, having influencing the country for so many years. You know, right after the independence of, I think the 1960s or something like that, right after the independence of Burkina Faso, immediately they signed an agreement with France before they can leave on trade, on military, in terms of French troops can interfere at a will, you know, when there is something happening. And, you know, he has been complaining about French troops are supposed to protect civilians in the areas that are being attacked by the Islamist groups. But then they were giving low attention to those to the civilians in those areas, but they were guarding. They were paying more attention to guarding the minerals of Burkina Faso. So when he took over, he told them, "You pack and go. To hell with your agreement. To hell with your agreement, and we will survive." And you see, everyone is now, the world is talking about Ibrahim Traore, who is currently actually in Russia. But then he did it knowing that people can survive, but he stood his ground. But also, I'm not telling our leaders to do the same, but I'm saying, what alternative do you have if you do such a thing here in South Sudan? If we are to tell UN or the SOFA agreement, which is similar to the French and Burkina Faso agreement, because we rushed to sign this SOFA agreement, it's a burden, by the way, on us. Like Al-Hadi said, if you look at the details, so many things that are actually not in favor of South Sudan, and especially the South Sudanese people. So I think if we are to tell UN to leave, let's also be leaders enough, let's be ready, let's be capable, let's have alternative in terms of providing peace and making sure that if you leave, we can survive, but then we have alternative of 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, let me just add something. What we are discussing here, we are discussing the renewed mandate of UN.
Right.
So we are not campaigning about let them go, let them do what, but we are trying to explain their roles as in peacekeeping missions in South Sudan, and what should our leader do so that this burden on UN should be the burden on the government, not on the UN. This is what we are saying. So I believe our leaders will come to their sense. There's time for everything. Maybe a time for them to think about this country, that we need to fix this country, we need to put it in the right place where it belongs, so that everybody in this South Sudan, in South Sudan, in every corner of this country, live happily and in peace with his neighbor.
Right. Now, apparently, we hear reports, you also write stories of clashes in different parts of South Sudan, in Morobo County, and parts of Upper Nile. And you did earlier mention that it might be worse if there is really serious engagement between SSPDF and forces that are still loyal to their detained leader, Dr. Riek Machar. So this is now the determinant of whether South Sudan will experience peace or will be actually experiencing the worst in the coming months. But and then you're having these arrangements in Juba between the government and a faction of SPLM-IO. So in summary, what would you say for this matter to be addressed as quick as you can? Some of you alluded to the calls that have been made by international community, but the leaders have not actually heeded to this call for dialogue. And so without dialogue, what next? What should we expect? So maybe 1 or 2 minutes each. I think we'll not jump to the next topic because we are time bound.
You know, I remember something. To me, the dialogue is a backbone for any crisis that you have. Like we have this thing in Arabic, the 40 days. I remember after the signing of the CP in 2005, and then the group of late General Paulino Matip together with the government of Sudan, there is something came out. They call it South-South dialogue. And South-South dialogue was leading by President Salva Kiir himself. It was a very successful dialogue, by the way. This is where the reintegration of all, they call it friendly forces of South in Sudan, Al-Quwat al-Sadiqa, those of Paulino Matip and the other group. Yes, the harsh word that they're using, militias, but for them they're not called them militias, they call them friendly forces. So this is where they become later SPLA forces, and later now we have SSPDF. So if you have the same spirit of the transitional period of Sudan of CPA time, 2007, 2006, I'm sure we'll cross this bridge that now, this crisis that we have now. Because the only issue now we have here in this country is the matter of the greediness of our politicians. When someone promised you, Lasuba, we're going to give you a Minister of Cabinet Affairs in Central Equatorial State, you start thinking about how you're going to handle that. So the only way forward for all these crises is a positive dialogue between the politicians. And then they have to have that spirit in their hearts, political will. If they have political will, I'm sure we'll play a very clean politics. Because now what we're playing is a very dirty politics. I remember traveling with this from Konga and Akile to Yambio. The aeroplane, we traveled for, we went for more than 30 minutes. You cannot see, there is no people there in these bushes.
Country is large.
The land is
Yes.
Right.
The
What is
empty.
that one takeaway you have for the viewers, Kongpa?
My takeaway is, is the decision by our government to work with the Stephen Parr group. If they mean it, they should end the fighting. They should reach out to these SPLA-IO forces to be part of the national army, integration of the security forces into one army. This is what they should actually reach out, not through the barrel of gun, but through dialogue. They should reach out to these commanders, because if you don't want to accommodate them, they will defend themselves, and then that will be disaster. The government also should think about international community. They should not put the deaf ear. They should talk to them, because I believe the minister and his deputy, they are career diplomats. They are seeing how things are going. All this statement, what does it mean? You see the statement from U.S. representative in the UN, at the United Nations, saying that they start to question the legitimacy of this government if they can arrest their partner, and if there is no implementation of this peace, because the legitimacy of this government is this peace agreement. So if you destroy this peace agreement, then where is your legitimacy? So this thing should go in the mind of our good leaders to think whether they decide to work alone or they will work with the international community. So it's upon them to fix the things the right way.
Right. I think you can pick from there as you sent your
nothing
message
much
talking
to
about the legitimacy.
Yeah.
Elia Lomora talked about the high-level standing committee thinking about some legal processes, and I think that's to signal how to move on with the implementation of the peace agreement, including what they are trying to do now, asking Parkwall's side to begin appointing and filling those gaps that have been left. So it's a little tricky here, but yes, you can speak about this and then...
Yeah, it's tricky. However, the fate of those detained should also be made public as soon as possible, because it's tricky. I can agree with you. Why? Because the other time Michael Makwe, Information Minister, said the investigation of someone like Dr. Riak, for instance, may even take up to 1 year. So you see, so at some point, looking at it from another angle also, the SPLM-IO should not or cannot continue without leadership. Good enough that they put it as interim leadership, but now moving ahead with restructuring all these, changing their representatives, it's also, people also cast doubt on that. I really hope that the SPLM-IO leadership under Stephen Parkwall will only replace those who ran away, those who are not present. But those who are present here, even if they did not go to Palm Africa, but they are still SPLM-IO, should maintain their positions in terms, especially...
It's not easy in politics.
Yes, but then...
You cannot work with someone that's against you.
This will a little bit reduce the tension. At least it will reduce the tension. But I know it is similar like what happened during Tabandeng. I think almost all of them were changed. So I really hope that they will only change few of them, especially those who are not around. But then I would also urge and call for continuous dialogue, and also memo the issue of revenge attacks should also stop, especially among the parties who are really carrying arms, because the people on the ground who are suffering, like you mentioned, Morobo, these are the common civilians or common citizens who will continue to suffer. I think to operationalize this revitalized peace agreement, it's important also to ensure that we rejuvenate the mechanisms in the implementation. If RJM continues to meet, if CTSAM continues to meet, because they will continue to say yesterday or last week there was an attack by SPLM IG in our territory, you know. So they will be having a report of the violation, where is it exactly happening, and people will continue to dialogue in those mechanisms. So this mechanism being adamant or being dead for some time, it will not really help the to expedite this implementation of the revitalized peace agreement. So to get on track, I think it's good to operationalize all the mechanisms so that they can resume
by having dialogue, as you said, and ensuring that all the parties are on board, because you need to have the other group also inside. So how to do that is the question.
All the parties, what you're saying, and you earlier asked about all the parties about in the high level committee. That high level standing committee represents all the parties to the revitalized peace agreement. So there is no problem, because Parkwal talked about unanimously agreed in the high level committee. So the high level committee represents IG, represents IO, represents SOA and FDs and OPP. So all of them are on board. even Vice President Vice President Josephine Lagu, because she was member of the high level, now she is the Vice President, so she will also have to be replaced. This is what will happen from the SOA side.
I think we beg to cease here. I would return my thanks to Alhadi Awari, Kongpal Chang, and Emmanuel Joseph Akile. I wish you had more time. That little one won't allow us to discuss the hike in water prices. But dear viewer, we guarantee you that we'll bring this discussion in the next coming days. But I just want to appreciate you for always following us, especially on Around South Sudan podcast. And I would like to also acknowledge One Moses, who streamed this alongside Darlington Moses. And I just want to wish you a happy weekend. Let's look forward to having another edition of Around South Sudan podcast. I have been the host, Lasuba Memo. Do you have a great weekend?
National development, peace building to national development. Welcome to Around South Sudan. You go to podcast for the stories that shape our nation. Each week we explore the most impactful headlines that are shaping the narrative in South Sudan. We delve into issues related to national development, peace building, politics, culture and economics. To stay informed and engaged, tune into Around South Sudan and be part of the conversation that matters. Subscribe now and join us for the stories that connect us all. Together,